Aitana Bonmati has been named the 2023 Ballon d'Or winner. So let's talk about it. It is none other than Barcelona and Spanish midfielder Aitana Bonmati to be named as the Ballon d'Or winner of the 2023 year. I mean, if you were shocked by this result, then you must have not been watching much of the season at all this year. She has had quite the year in both club and international football, winning a treble with Barcelona and obviously the World Cup with Spain. It was not just collective trophies that she was capturing this season, because she was named as the Super Cup MVP, the Champions League MVP. She was also named in the Champions League Team of the Season, and most recently in the World Cup as the World Cup Golden Boot winner. At only 25, Aitana Bonmati becomes the second youngest player to win this award. Obviously, it was Ada Hegerberg back in 2018 as the inaugural year of the Ballon d'Or for the women, where she was 23. Aitana Bonmati at 25, winning it for the first time. I certainly have a feeling that this will not be the last time. She continues the reign of a Spanish and a Barcelona midfielder to get this award. Obviously, the last 2 years, back-to-back, Alexia Putellas being named as the winner of that. And almost in some sense, the fact that the reign has been passed on to Aitana Bonmati made a lot of sense. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about Aitana Bonmati. Like I mentioned, the ceremony and the award night, as plenty happened, as well as touch on the rankings a little bit further on in the video today. When you watch Aitana Bonmati for the many years that she's been playing at such a high level, and again, she's only 25, she's super young, but she has been one of the most consistently superb players in the past 4 years at least. And specifically in the last year, if we're really going to focus on what this season that was a nomination for the Ballon d'Or looked like for her, she had to take on a little bit of a different role in the midfield, with Alexia Putellas being out with an ACL injury. She was played a little bit higher on the pitch with Barcelona, still on that right side, contrary to Alexia Putellas' left side, but with her often would be Patrick Gujarro, and then behind them would be Kira Walsh, again, most consistently this season as the pivot. Aitana didn't have to replicate Alexia Putellas' role because both of them are very unique players. Bonmati's style of football is just so good and different to watch to Alexia's. Alexia's is also very unique. They're different styles of football. They have different roles, they have different strengths and different weaknesses that they do in the midfield. But with Aitana Bonmati being pitched a little bit higher, you got to see more of her in the penalty box. You got to see more of her floating around that penalty box, where she sometimes would be catching those second balls. And I just mentioned her movement over there. I mean, she ranks in one of the highest when you're looking at her stats and how efficient her movement is in terms of off the ball or on the ball. She drifts in and out. She's able to kind of move around markers that are around her. She's able to open up pockets for her teammates and open pockets for herself when she does get on the ball. Her dribbling qualities on the ball are just so smooth to watch, and that was massively on display during the World Cup, where she was involved in various assists and multiple goals, where she was just dribbling around, moving the ball like how she wanted to, easy feet, quick feet on the ball. She's a master at what she does. And even if she's not the player scoring and assisting all these goals, she does such an important role in holding that midfield, dictating how her teammates are able to operate together. Barcelona and Spain play very similar style of football, specifically that quick tiki-taka football. And the midfield has a huge emphasis in order to move the ball as quickly as you need to, in order to move the ball as efficiently as you need to produce dangerously moving forward balls. That midfield is crucial. And when you have a player like Aitana Bonmati, she is a lot of that secret recipe to how that operates together. It's no secret that she's winning MVP when Barcelona win the Champions League title, and she's also named one of the best players in the World Cup when Spain is able to win that World Cup. Absolutely, it takes an entire team, an entire staff, and a head coach to win a trophy, regardless if it's on the international or the club level. But when you have a player consistently do what she does at such a high level with different teams, different teammates, it's hard not to say that she is key to every success around her. And at the World Cup, I believe it was right after the Switzerland game, she mentioned that touching or not touching the ball doesn't depend on her 100%, because sometimes she's just moving around, finding these positions for that ball to end up into, whether that depends on her touch or somebody else's touch. And that is the exact definition of a team player. Like, she's so good on an individual level, but when it comes to being as a team role big player, stepping up on the big stage, stepping up in the big moments, I mean, you're talking World Cup final and Champions League final, and you're consistently able to step up and play the way she does. It's simply hard to match that. And when you hear a lot of her teammates, either former teammates, current teammates, again, either on Spain or Barcelona's side, and they're saying, Aitana is one of the best players that I've worked around. Her IQ, her vision in the game is one of the best. When Alexia Putellas and Map Leon and Patrick Gajaro and even Kira Walsh being such big fans of Aitana Bonmati, and those are players that you have to deem one of the best in the current game, are coming out and saying that my football is as good as it is because I play alongside Aitana Bonmati, that tells you that not only does she have an important influence when you see her on the game, but how preparations look behind the scenes when every player is training around her. She grew up in the Barcelona system from a very young age. She has been in that Spanish football school of thought since she started kicking a ball. She has that winning mindset, that mindset of resilience and determination, and she always speaks about that and how that is exactly the product of her hard work. Everybody's saying that this is the prime and the peak Aitana Bonmati, but I would go as far as to argue that we've only just started seeing the peak of Aitana Bonmati. At 25 years old, she's entering those prime years, which is a very scary thought for any opponent that's going to come up against Barcelona and Spain. But for the football fan, for the Barcelona and Spanish fan, this is an absolutely amazing thought to think about, that Aitana Bonmati is only going to continue to get better. Like, that's just such an interesting... I'm getting excited thinking about how that could be in the next 5 or 6 years. Playing at a more advanced role, she got 19 goals last season. The season before, she got 18 goals. But again, with Aitana Bonmati, it's not just the goal involvement. It's how she gets that system to operate altogether. Without her, a lot of the key involvements and a lot of the key factors that you see operating and working on the field wouldn't work as smoothly. I've seen a lot of comments be like, the only reason she won it is because Alexia Putellas was injured and she got to be on that role. And I would completely disagree. I think Aitana Bonmati's playing at this level for so long that maybe sometimes it was overshadowed slightly by Alexia Putellas, and that's not to take a dig at either of them. It's because Alexia Putellas is that good. And even if that was the case for so many people's eyes, that the only reason she got the shine is because Alexia was injured. And you know what I'd say? Fantastic. Sometimes players need to take the opportunities. In fact, you would see 90% of the players that had some kind of boost in their career, it's probably because a teammate was injured and they got a chance to shine and do what they are doing right now. That's football. That's how it works. It's a cycle. Some players get injured. Others get that highlight. I don't think that is the case with Bonmati, but if that is the argument, then kudos to her. But she is phenomenal. 25, and she comes across as a very humble player. She's not one that's talking about, I'm winning all these trophies. I'm always in the forefront with trophies. She comes across as, this is awesome. I'm going to celebrate it, and I'm going to continue working very hard for my team and my teammates. And even in her speech at the Ballon d'Or, she was thanking her teammates, her club, her parents, her opponents even, and mentioning how important it is for her role to be as a role model, to continue advocating for a safe and better environment for the sport. She's a fantastic representative and ambassador of the sport, and I firmly believe that this will not be the last time that we see Aitana Bonmati win a Ballon d'Or trophy. Now, moving on to this event that I would categorize as quite a catastrophic event for various reasons. Now, when this event was announced and when it was going to happen, it was announced that it was going to be during the international window, the international break for women's football, which just somehow happens to be not the first time. This happened back in 2021, where again, it happened in November, in the November window, and players could not attend. And I remember that one being specifically quite salty because it was right after the Olympics. From a Canadian perspective, there was 3 Canadians that were nominated. Neither of them were able, any of them actually, 3 of them couldn't make it out to the event because they were on the other side of the world in Mexico playing for an international window. And in my head, I'm like, how is this event running after a huge event like the Olympics, where Canada just won their first ever gold medal, and you have 3 players out of that tournament not being able to make it? It was lazy scheduling, it was a disrespect to the game, and a lot of concerns were voiced from players within the game, head coaches. I remember Ann Skinner being specifically vocal about it, and it was like concerns were raised, questions were raised. Hopefully this would not happen again. Thankfully, this was avoided last year, but this year it happened again. And worst of all, it happens in a Women's World Cup here. Mind you, the World Cup concluded a few months ago, and I would say a huge chunk of the nominees were nominated because of their World Cup appearances and because of their World Cup standout achievements. If you cannot make sure that those standout players in the World Cup can attend their nomination at the Ballon d'Or in that same World Cup year, then there's a lot of questions for the organizers to answer. But forget the World Cup. Put the World Cup aside. For any awards event to be running where you almost have over 50% of the nominees not be able to make it in attendance is simply wrong. And this would never happen in the men's game. You will never, never, ever see a Ballon d'Or event or a UEFA Player of the Year event or Premier League play, regardless of any event awards show. You will never have that conflict with a player's schedule because they work around it. Not only is that a duty of theirs, but it's a duty to respect the sport and the players and the athletes. Why can that respect not be shown to the women's game? Are the players any less than the male athletes? 7 players attended the event, most of which are not reporting to camp right now because they're injured, with the likes of Frodilina Rolfo or the likes of Amanda Ilestedt. Alongside them, you had Mapillon and Patrick Gujoro, who were not reporting to the Spanish camp, and Linda Caicedo, whose camp is already concluded with Colombia. The only person who's currently in camp that made it out to the event was the winner, Aitana Bonmati. Because, I mean, could you imagine if the winner was not there? When that live stream is happening with the red carpet and all the players and the athletes are rolling in, and there's usually an interview before they head out, millions are tuned into that. And when you have millions tuned in with a huge exposure, and you know this is the Ballon d'Or event, new fans could be just stumbling on the live stream, fans from the World Cup, the Women's World Cup or the Qatar World Cup from last year, you have a lot of eyes on this event. And when that red carpet has more wives and girlfriends of the men's athletes than the nominated women's Ballon d'Or players, that's an issue. That's a big problem. When we talk about representation of the sport, and when we talk about the players getting the platform that they firmly deserve to have, and then you have 7 players show up out of the 30 that were nominated because of a conflicted schedule, because they can simply, postpone it a few weeks or however it is they could have scheduled it. That's very poor. And I think if this happens again, it's going to raise a lot of questions in terms of legitimacy of this award in general. Again, there's a lot of questions to answer. A question that was answered, and not the best way, was why are there not the same awards for the women's game like it is for the men's game? For the women's game, in reference, you have the Club of the Year and the Ballon d'Or. That's pretty much it. Contrary to the men's, who have obviously the Ballon d'Or, the Copa Trophy, the Yashin Trophy, which is the goalkeeper trophy, the Gerd Muller Trophy, and the Socrates Awards, as well as the Club of the Year, obviously. Now, I'm no mathematician, but that's at least 5 more awards given for the men's game than the women's game. And again, I fail to understand why that is. Isn't it the same sport that they're playing? Isn't it the same ball that they're kicking around? Isn't it the same amount of players that they're fielding? Is it not the same amount of goalposts that they're using? What is it that's so different from the men's game to the women's game that means the women's game does not get these trophy categories? What is the separation? I fail to see it, other than the fact that there's mere disrespect and a little bit of misogyny from those organizers. But anyway, that question was indeed asked for the editor-in-chief for France Football, and he said, well, actually, we're taking very big steps here. We introduced the Club of the Year, just like the men's, and we also made sure that the nominee list was a little bit bigger to have a little bit more representation. As for the Ballon d'Or award, we're kind of working to legitimize that and make sure that it's getting the attention that it deserves because it's so new and it was only introduced in 2018. That answer is so telling to how out of touch these organizers are. The Ballon d'Or gets attention like nothing else. I mean, it absolutely is legitimate in the eyes of most fans and a huge number of the audience. So to say that you are still working on legitimizing it shows how out of touch you are with the audience and how they recognize this award. In fact, when you're giving them a trophy or 2 instead of 5 or 6, you're delegitimizing yourself as somebody who recognizes the women's game. So you do more harm than good when you try to do this whole thing. We're trying to legitimize it and it's taking a little bit of time. I'm going to call it complete BS. Worst of all, you have somebody of Nikola Djokovic give out this Ballon d'Or award, which I would, urge you to go watch the replay, because when Aitana Bonmati comes out to the stage and they're calling on her name, the trophy's actually in the back. Somebody runs and goes and gets it to put it on stage. Djokovic is a very well-known athlete in tennis. He's won so many different world trophies. I mean, he is the face of tennis, among few others. But why is a men's tennis player who was up there talking about his career giving out an award for the Ballon d'Or's women's winner? I mean, riddle me that. But we're working to legitimize the women's Ballon d'Or, right? Like, that's part of our legitimization process. Do we not have any other women's footballers, former or current, to give away that award? I mean, not even footballers. Let's talk about tennis players. Do we not have female tennis players to give out that award? Djokovic, I mean, really? And this is also an individual who has spoken out against equal play. This is an individual that is no ally for the women's game. This is an individual that's never been pictured at a women's game, at a World Cup. I mean, nothing. Djokovic has no relation into that award. And I can understand why some of you are like, Mariam, well, why is that such a big deal? I got that in my DMs when I tweeted about it. I'll tell you why it's a big deal. One, we're talking about representation, and two, we're talking about an entire storyline here. When Aitana Bonmati watches this footage in 50 years and is watching how she got her first ever Ballon d'Or, what is a resemblance or commonality that she has with Nikola Djokovic handing her this prestigious award? Is there anything that they share? Is there any kind of value that they have both advocated for? Again, Djokovic is an individual who you can go read plenty of his interviews and work, has actually advocated against equal pay. Do they play the same sport? Did she grow up watching this player as a role model to her? I mean, the answer to all of this is probably no. There is easily 100 names in my head that I could have listed you to give Aitana Bonmati that award, and Nikola Djokovic would probably be like the 4,000th person on that list. Like, he'd be very, very far down. So again, whoever is making these decisions is so out of touch with the audience, with the game, with the players. It's very, very poor. Let me go back to my representation. Again, you have so many eyes watching the sport. I mean, had it been, for example, Mia Hamm. If Mia Hamm was giving out this trophy, you would think a few fans are likely going to Google who the hell is Mia Hamm and are going to find out an incredible record and are going to find out the incredible achievements and goals that she scored. Maybe you'll have a few more fans. And again, this is a World Cup year where you already have so many new eyeballs on the sport that people are willing to learn. If somebody's tuning in to watch the Women's Ballon d'Or Award, they're likely willing to learn who the hell is giving out this award. But it's Djokovic. Like, the missed opportunity on this is absolutely ridiculous to me. And it gets worse. They have a performer there that blanks every single female player except Linda Caicedo, because likely she was sitting between two men players. Goes down to the audience, which is the front row, and a lot of them were the nominated players, blanks every female player, and then handshakes with every other man player. Like, that is so poor to see on a big stage like this. And I think, again, organizers, in theory, this was already going to look shambolic, but in practice, it looked worse than I had anticipated it to look like. For next year's Ballon d'Or, I want to make sure that the organizers try their best to not schedule this in a conflict, make sure that the nominated attendees are actually able to come out. And mind you, next year is going to be an Olympics year in France, so they best try their best for these players to come out. On top of that, I would urge more trophies to be involved. Why don't they have a Yashin trophy for the women's game? Is it like, do goalkeepers not exist in the women's game? It baffles me. I want to see many former players be involved in the event, be involved in simply attending, be involved in giving out the trophies. I would 100% want to see a female athlete in any sport. Like, I mean, we're keeping it very open here. Hand out the Women's Ballon d'Or. And again, I don't think this is something that's too ridiculous to ask for. It's simply players who have worked hard enough to deserve this moment in their life. They deserve the best representation in this event. And when the event is ran as poorly as that, you've just got to scratch your head and you just got to turn off the live stream. Like, it just was not great. Moving on a little bit to the list that we got to see. It's great that we all agree that Aitana Bonmati is the clear winner. I feel like since the rollout of the Ballon d'Or, we haven't completely agreed. I feel like the football community as a whole on who the winner is. But for this one, I'm glad we all agreed to this. Looking at the criteria, it's still a very vague criteria. And I think, again, when you have a year like the Euros last year and then you have a World Cup year like this year, it's just so hard. Even when you look at the criteria and the points, it's just so hard to see how it's weighed out. And like I mentioned, football is a collective sport. You win as a team, you lose as a team. And so when you have individual awards, it's always a little bit iffy, because how do you give an individual award of collective achievement? It's hard, and you have to then weigh down what each individual contributed. And it's like, well, okay, they contributed to this game, but they also contributed to this game. But then this player contributed a little bit more to this game. how do you weigh that? It's a really, really hard scale to measure. And when the criteria is as vague as it is from the Ballon d'Or organizers, it's going to cause up and stir a little bit of drama. Some of my thoughts, though, on that completely, though, is Mappy Leon being ranked as number 16 is absolutely abysmal. I do understand that she missed the World Cup, but to not think that she was vital in Barcelona's treble is ludicrous. I mean, she's not even in the top 15. Not the top 15 in the world. That's insane. Similarly with Gura Reiten, she was so important to Chelsea last season, and she scored so many important goals in the Champions League, in the season as a whole, so many different clutch goals that putting her number 19 is absolutely insane. Her Chelsea teammate Sam Kerr got second, again, the second year in a row where she's ranked top third. What a star that she is. I mean, she's Australia's biggest athlete, continues to be. But again, it's like, how do you weigh this? Because I would say Sam Kerr was just as an important player for Chelsea as Gura Reiten last season. And Sam Kerr missed the first 3 games of the World Cup. She didn't play a lot of the World Cup. Australia did incredible. But how important was she in that role? Not to be disrespectful, but not so much. So if we're going based off just seasons, how do you have a 17 place gap between Sam Kerr and Gura Reiten? I can't explain it. Alexandra Popp, again, in 7th. That's very tricky to choose. Wolfsburg didn't win the league last season. They made it to the Champions League final. In the World Cup, she played an important role, but again, Germany crashed out pretty early. So how do you measure collective and individual? It's hard. Would I have her in the number 7th spot? Probably not, but good thing that I'm not voting for this. Jill Roord, for example, being ranked number 29th, she played a very important role in Netherlands campaign. She was the highest scorer for Holland at the World Cup. In my eyes, she was also just as important as some of the top performers at Wolfsburg in their Champions League run. So again, how is she getting ranked number 29 when then you have Pop in 7th? Like, the disparity is so huge that like you just scratch your head with it. Then you also have the discourse of the NWSL, Sophia Smith being ranked number 25. A lot of questions in terms of what is the NWSL's role here? What's the role of American players when it comes to the Ballon d'Or nominees? They're not playing European football, and so a lot of their international recognition would have to come on the international stage with the US. But if the US is not doing so well, how do you rate them then? I think that's a different topic, a different video. But again, Sophia Smith in number 25, I'm not too sure about that. I'm very much happy, though, to see that Hayley Raso is number 17. I think she's improved in the story that she's been from breaking her back when she was in the US to the leap that she's had is magnificent to watch. Mary Earp, seeing a goalkeeper in that number 5th spot is also quite a joy. Linda Caicedo being in the top 10 as an 18-year-old. We saw Trinity Rodman be the youngster last year. It's Caicedo. What a magnificent player that she is, again, in the top 10. It's great to see. But I also think the nominee list is not the nominee list that I would have had. I mean, how do you not have Carolina Graham-Hansen in here? How do you not have Kara Walsh in here? There's so many players that you just scratch your head and you're like, this is weird. And I think this has been quite a weird nominee list purely because of the different injuries that we got to see of like Alexia Putellas again and Viviana Miedema and Beth Mead, who would have been apparent names that you throw in here. And the World Cup is a World Cup year that was instantly going to throw different names that probably would have not been in there. So the Ballon d'Or nominee list is always a hard one, specifically when it comes after a big competition, but that's just how individual awards work in a collective sport. It's tough, it's difficult. Thankfully, I'm not in a position to vote for the list yet. I feel like otherwise I'd be a very, very stressed woman right now. However, we closed the books this year in the 2023 Ballon d'Or award. There really any award in the women's game as Aitana Bonmati being crowned as such. A magnificent player that if you've not been able to watch, I highly recommend you start watching. I also demand that this event gets ran much, much better next year. And hopefully the nominee list gets a little bit of a clearance and the boundaries of criteria isn't so crazy fluctuated. Let me know your thoughts on the rankings, on the list, on how the event went, I guess, and Aitana Bonmati clearly being the winner, as she should be. Again, as critical as I've been of the event, I do not take any of this away from Aitana Bonmati. Again, I, as a fan of the sport and a fan of her, just absolutely love seeing what she does, and she most definitely deserved this award, and I do expect her to collect a few more as the season goes on. As always, let me know your thoughts and opinions down below in the comments, and to stay updated and to continue enjoying the beautiful game, make sure you subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter. And as always, I will see you later.